Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is my gaming PC, or at least this is what it used to look like, because I'm going to show you in this video how I've changed basically everything in it, including the motherboard, the cooler, the RAM, the fans, and more. And I want to show you why and talk about that, because I've had a number of different issues. Now, I don't often spend much time upgrading my main machine because I'm often building other ones, and to be honest, I'm sinking so much time into making videos and doing build guides and other things. I don't have time to spend on my own build, but I've been putting this off for ages. Lian Li was kind enough to send me a while back the 140mm reverse blade infinity fans, which I've been after for ages because I wanted to populate the bottom of my case with those, which is one nice look. But the other thing that happened was a few different issues have been nagging at me over time, frustratingly so, really annoying problems, stupid things. For example, I was running the Galahad LCD cooler, which I really like, but I found that the pump was ever so slightly louder than the Kraken cooler that I was using before, and it was annoying me. I don't know if it's an issue with just mine or a wider issue with a lot of them. It wasn't so loud that it was obnoxious, but it was definitely a little bit louder, and that was a problem. I was also noticing some temperature issues, which actually I do think were down to the i9 CPU that I'm running, because that runs really hot. And the problem I was encountering there was I was using an Asus motherboard, the Strix Gaming Wi-Fi 2, which has AI overclocking in it that is difficult to turn off, and you can't undervolt with Intel's XTU. You have to go into the BIOS and change the settings on there. So the CPU was running hot, which meant obviously the whole thing, you know, the pump was running harder, the fans were louder, and other things. And so a few different issues, but then other issues as well. For example, my system kept blue screening a lot, and very inconveniently. Now, I wouldn't do it when I was editing videos, but when I'm playing games, it was blue screening regularly, and usually when I'm in the middle of playing with friends, which is pretty frustrating. And it was making capturing gameplay footage difficult, because I've got a gaming channel. If you like my stuff, head over to the Provoked Prawn Pews and subscribe to that. It'll really help me out, because it's still only got 4,000 subscribers. Anyway, that was crashing a lot, causing issues, real headache. And that's why I did a video on how to troubleshoot blue screens of death, and I went into a lot of different depth on that because I was testing different ways to fix it. I still couldn't fix it, still kept crashing. Very frustrating. Now, blue screens can be down to so many different things. Software conflicts, other hardware issues. It could be your RAM, for example, your SSDs. I've done tests on my RAM. I've done checks on the SSDs. And unfortunately, I couldn't just rip out all the SSDs. I tried reinstalling Windows, did it with a fresh install of Windows. That still didn't work. I even tried swapping my power supply unit. I also had other issues, which were down to the audio on my headset. Occasionally I just hear like a crackle, which was never there before, and it would just start making a really weird noise, and I'd have to turn my headset on and off again, or at least turn the system off and on again. So I was using a Rodecaster Pro 2, and then the Rodecaster Duo, and then the Streamer X, and each of them had the same problem. So I thought, well, it can't be hardware level, it has to be something on the motherboard. Maybe I've got some power going through that's causing an issue. Maybe there's something wrong with the power supply unit. So I tried swapping the power supply unit, and it was still doing it. And then I heard other people reporting it was a problem, and some suggested that maybe the USB connections on the motherboard are an issue. So I tried taking those out, and it was still doing it. So in the end, I got so annoyed, I bought myself an MSI Carbon motherboard, a Z790 motherboard, and completely swapped the motherboard out and changed to the MSI Carbon motherboard, which I'm happy to report is actually now really stable. Now, I assumed that maybe I'd bent some of the pins on the motherboard and the CPU, because if you bend one of the pins, that can lead to instability. But I checked, the Strix motherboard was fine, so that wasn't an issue. Obviously, I'd also done BIOS updates, so there are loads of potential problems that you can get with your system that are worth checking and doing. BIOS updates, new installation of Windows, gets rid of any driver problems. Obviously, hardware checks, running a mem test on your RAM, for example, and doing things like that. You can also run various different tests on your drives to make sure they're running properly. And I covered that in my blue screen of death video if you want to check that out. I went into loads of depth. So I checked all my drives and did all those things. But at the end of the day, just swapping the motherboard out, which is a really extreme measure, was the way to fix my problem. And now I don't have that issue anymore. But while I was there, I also thought it would be fun to do some other things. So I've taken out the LCD Lian Li Galahad 2, and I've swapped it out instead for the NZXT Kraken Elite, the 360mm version of the Kraken cooler. I've been a big fan of the Z73 Kraken coolers for a while. I like the LCD display. I like having the dual temperature readouts on there, and I like how quiet they run. They are surprisingly quiet and pretty good coolers as well. And you can just swap out your fans. And I put Lian Li's Infinity fans on there and set that up so it would run nicely. The other thing that I've done is I basically went to town on it. Now, the original plan was actually to show you the difference, because what I wanted to do was to upgrade bits and show you how much difference it made between them. So I was doing like thermal benchmarks on the original setup with the Galahad, showing how the temperatures were too high, and then other things. And then I was going to slowly, one by one, swap out the parts and test it and show you all the different things that made a difference. People have been nagging at me, for example, to use a contact frame for ages and show what difference that makes. The contact frame, if you don't know already, is a little piece of metal, basically, that replaces the standard frame around the CPU on your motherboard. And the idea here is, over time, it will help with the tension of basically the cooler on your CPU, because with the rectangular shape of the Intel CPUs, over time they're said to bend, which then means that the surface isn't as flat, which then means that the cooler doesn't make as good contact, which then means that your CPU starts to run hot over time. So it's not a short-term solution to a cooling problem, and it would be really difficult to demonstrate that anyway by just, doing a benchmark before and after. It would be difficult to show the difference in temp because it's actually meant to be a longer term thing. So I thought I'd do that. We'd swap that out and have that. So now I've swapped cooler, and I've also put the contact frame in. I've also swapped my motherboard, which is obviously going to have a difference because MSI doesn't have the AI overclocking as default, so then it's not running as hot straight out of the box. But you can make some performance tweaks, obviously, as well. And then I also thought reverse blade fans on the bottom of the case. And while I was there, why not do push-pull? So then I've got reverse blade fans on the radiator, front and back, pulling the air through from the back, cold air pulling in through the radiator into the case, cold air coming in from the bottom. So I've changed that. So instead of 3 fans on the radiator, I've now got 6. And while doing this, I was able to do multiple Lian Li fans, which you might have seen if you're interested in my channel, talking about the problems you might have with those, how to wire them, the logic of the reverse blade fans and other things, and basically gone into depth on all those different things. I also wanted to go for some Carbonaut, so changing out the thermal paste for Thermal Grizzly Carbonaut pad, and I had one knocking around in my drawer, which I thought might work. Foolishly, no. That was actually, I think I must have bought it back when it was like 10th gen CPUs, when they were squarer, and so it wouldn't fit. It's actually too small. You're meant to cover the entire thing. If you don't know already, Carbonaut is basically a thermal pad, and I have used them in the past, and they are actually really nice as an alternative to thermal paste, because basically they're a little tiny thermal pad. They're very flimsy, but you can just gently lay it over the top of the CPU, then put your cooler down on top of it. It covers the entirety of the CPU and gives good contact and thermal conductivity that way. And you don't need to worry about thermal paste. You don't need to worry about, if you've always worried about putting too much thermal paste on or not enough, you can just put this pad there instead and then seat your cooler down on top. Unfortunately, it does have to cover the whole thing, and my pad is too small because it's for an older generation, so it just wouldn't work. So I had to abandon it. I could have bought another one, and I think I probably will do that in the future as another test and a demo of it, because it's one of the nicer ways of sorting this out and not having to think about thermal paste issues. So then I've got a PC that now looks completely different from what it originally did. I've tidied up the cables a little bit in the front as well, and I'm really happy with it now as it is. It maybe doesn't look as good because we've now got a black motherboard instead of a white one, and I kind of had an all white build and now it's black and white. But you know what? The stability has been much better, and there's no crashes, there's no blue screens, everything's running nicely. The temps are a lot better. It runs nice and quiet. It's really quiet now. even with the additional fans, so another 3 fans in there than what it had before, it still runs really quietly, which is important to me because I don't want it being captured when I'm doing voiceovers, for example, and I just don't want it nagging at me when I'm playing games. So it looks really good and it works really nicely. But I thought this would be fun just to sort of talk about how, you know, I've done all these videos to try and teach you how to build your own PC, but even I still have problems. And whenever I do, I try and make videos about it to sort of educate people, whether that's trying to fix blue screens, working out how to test your RAM, or anything else. So if you found any of that useful, or you want to know more about it, check out the tips playlist that I've got linked down below, and the other one on how to build a gaming PC, because I try and include those sorts of things in there. And the playlists on my channel you might well find helpful with various different tips on sorting things out. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know what you think about my PC in the comments if you care, or if you think there's too much RGB or whatever else. I really like it. It's my build. It's my personal build. And the Infinity fans are gorgeous. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Thanks for watching. You've made it right to the end of the video, you brilliant legend you. If you've enjoyed it, click that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and drop me a comment down below if you've got any questions. If you really enjoyed it, consider joining the channel and see the benefits of doing so. Check out these other videos. You might well find them interesting or useful. And most importantly, have a great life.